Hey guys, UWG Nick here, and welcome back to another Sunday Snippet. Now, I assume the title is kind of spoiled what we're going to talk about, or what I'm going to talk about here today, and that is my injury. I managed to tear my bicep. Like, not just tear it as in, oh, it's a little bit, like, roughed up. I mean, completely, like, bonk. It broke. It snapped. It's not connected anymore. Now, it's not the entire bicep. It is only what is known as the long head of the bicep, which is the bicep, as the name implies, is bi. It has two. Just as the tricep has three heads or main like muscle. It's like three muscles that connect into the same one. The bicep has also two muscles or two heads that grow together when you come down. So if you look at the arm here, you have one of the heads is going on the outside here, and the other one is going on the inside. Now my left outer bicep head snapped up at the shoulder. So there's a sinew that goes down here, grows into the muscle, and then it connects so that the muscle here in between, which is connected to down at your, I don't know, what is this called? It's not the armpit, because the armpit is up here. But down at the like inside of your elbow, that is where the other end is connected. So mine snapped up here, which means that the outer head of the muscle is getting pulled down to here, because the muscle is always under like a slight strain. It's kind of like a spring, and it's always like slightly, even if you relax it like straight, especially the bicep, then this is now currently like under tension. Let's put it like that. And when you tighten it, the muscle cells contract, which enables this kind of movement. Now, when it breaks, since there's always tension, the muscle goes bonk. It falls down towards the inside of your elbow if it breaks here. For some people, there's also videos on YouTube. You can see people breaking muscles. Sometimes it snaps down here, and then it goes whomp up to the shoulder. So for me, it's my left arm and the outer bicep head. Now, I'm gonna try to show you. Now, okay, flexing nowadays usually means throwing money around. I'm gonna do the more traditional kind of flexing, which is flexing my muscles. I'm not doing this in order to show you off how buff I am. I mean, I used to be buff. Nowadays, I'm not so much anymore because I don't go to the gym. But I want to demonstrate the difference between my arms right now. So I'm gonna lean back a little bit. I'm gonna flex both of them, and you can tell that on the left side it's gonna look a little bit different. So now I'm tightening the muscles, and you can see like a different symmetry, so to speak. My left muscle right here has a sharper bend up than my right one, which is more of a smooth curve. Now if we look at it from the outside, you see this little, like, I don't know, comic book kind of muscle right there compared to my other arm, which is smooth, the curve. And go back to this one. So you can see exactly where it's gone. Like this pit here should not exist. It should be right here. The muscle should still be stretched out towards here, just like it is on my other arm. Like there's a slight pit here. That is where the sinew is, and then the muscle in itself starts here. But as you can see, it's a lot higher, it's a lot smoother here because it's still connected to both sides. Whereas on this one, it's broken. There's nothing here. This makes certain movements very difficult right now. I was lucky in the sense that the part that broke is like pure sinew. There's not a lot of muscle fibers at the breaking point, which means there's not a lot of blood flow at the breaking point, nor is there a lot of nerves at the breaking point, which means I'm not in a lot of pain. It feels very strange to me. My arm keeps shouting that, something's wrong all the time. It's like having, I don't know how to explain it. It's like, when you cut your finger, the first reaction that you get is like, it's not pain. It's your body going like, something's not right. And you're kind of in like little tension. It's like, what the fuck? That's kind of how my arm feels constantly. It's like, whenever I move it, it goes like, no, all the time. Even though it's not painful. Certain movements like this, when I lift up here, becomes very uncomfortable at a certain point for me. Because the muscle that should do it on this side doesn't exist, whereas my right one can do it just fine. Left one, uncomfortable. Because the other muscles need to compensate for that one missing, but they get put under a strain that is not biomechanically right for them. Usually they help the main muscle, but the main muscle is now missing, so they're going like, this is a lot heavier than it should be. So this needs to be operated. I've read online that if this happens after a certain age, at which time the body starts, getting more brittle and it happens more commonly. But if you're like 70, 80, something like that, and this happens, at least in Finland, they usually don't fix it. I mean, if you have private medical, private health service or something like that, if you go to a private clinic, then you can decide yourself what they do. But if you're on the public side, which is, we have this national healthcare, free national healthcare kind of thing. It's not exactly free, but it's very heavily subsidized. And in those cases, they're more like, well, you're kind of old. How much do you really need this anymore? Maybe it's best that we don't operate, because it's more and more in orthopedics, it's going towards like we don't operate unless we have to, unless there's like a clear, very strong benefit. And in many cases, the benefit isn't that great, because you go in and fix something, it will never be as strong as it was before. And most of the time, just by rehabilitating, the body can readjust or compensate for what's missing. In my case, and in this case, I'm too young. I still need my bicep. It's gonna go to an operation. I'm like 95, 96% sure. And this is not something that grows back on its own. As I said, the tension pulls the muscle down, which means these 2 points that should be connected will never see each other again unless somebody physically actually pulls them together, because they both go wank to each side. So it will not heal. It cannot heal on its own. I've also, before, when I was in Japan, I'm actually representing my the guys I trained with in Japan while I was there. It was Power Arts, so shout out to Blair. When I was in Japan, we did a show with Blair and with Power Arts, and I tore the ligaments in my shoulder, right shoulder. And that's also one of those things that I didn't go to the doctor in Japan. I don't know why. I just felt like, well, whatever, fuck it. And this arm was a problem for like 6 months almost. When I came back to Finland, a few months after it happened, quite a few months after it happened, I went to the doctor. They checked it. They were like, yeah, if you were a professional athlete, we'd fix it, but you're not. So we're just going to let your body like compensate for it. Now, this is permanent damage as well in the right shoulder, but thanks to acrobatics, thanks to weightlifting and all this stuff, my body has been able to adjust to it. So the other muscles around the area that got out of sync, so to speak, they're simply doing more of a job to keep the structure of the shoulder intact and enable me to do all the things that I'm able and I have wanted to be able to do. So that was one of those cases where rehabilitation works, because the thing that broke off simply kept the structure of the shoulder correct. When that broke, the muscles need to just, do more work to keep it stable through dynamic force. So the muscles do a bigger job in order to keep it there, instead of just relying on ligaments keeping the bones in place. This one is different because there is no other thing. This is a primary function. It's not a secondary function. This is a primary function. It needs to be fixed through an operation. I think that I've, during this video, probably marked out what has broken. If I haven't, let me show you now. Here's a picture, and you can see this is the anatomy of the bicep, and if you look up top on the outside, you see number 10. Pretty much exactly where the arrow is, maybe a little bit lower, is where my sinew has snapped, and that is busted. How did it happen though? Well, as I've been talking about, I've talked before, cut. As I've mentioned in earlier videos, I teach acrobatics to children, and this is exactly where this happened as well. I was spotting the kids doing front handsprings and back handsprings, and one of the kids did a back handspring, did it quite poorly, so I had to catch him. he went off a little bit to the side, so I had to like actually reach out a little bit more, which means there's a bigger, what do you call it, leverage point, a longer leverage point than what I prefer to have when I spot. It's always useful to, when you spot, keep your hands close to your own body. So that means you're standing very close to the person you're spotting, but he went away from me, so I had to reach out like this. He did it quite poorly, which means he went up and came down very hard on my hand where he should have been rolling over it, but he came with all his weight on my hand, as well as pulling it outwards. And now my reaction was catch and lift. It would have been probably better to just kind of slow his descent and let him roll over or catch himself. That's also probably a pretty good way to learn what you're doing wrong. But my reaction was to catch him completely. So I really strained against his weight, as well as the hand pulling out to the side, and I just heard a thick like tunk in my shoulder, and my arm went really wonky. So I put the kid down, I walked off, and I was like, what the fuck happened? I found another teacher. There's always several teachers at the same time in the area. So I went over to another teacher, shout out to Sophia, and I told her that, something probably broke in my arm. I need to sit down and check for a while. Could you take care of the kids? And she went and handled them, and I sat down in a corner, and I looked at my arms, and I was like, this does not look right. They're different. And that's when I pretty much realized immediately, like, I think I snapped my bicep. So I walked over to her and I was like, I need to go to the hospital probably. She was like, yeah, that doesn't look good. You need to go to the hospital. I was like, yeah, all right. Actually, I think it was her suggestion. I don't think I was mentioning hospitals. It was like, that doesn't look right. You need to go to the hospital. I was like, okay. So I just grabbed my shit and jumped into my car and started driving in towards town. This is where it gets funny. I went to the university hospital, which has like a emergency kind of reception place where you can go. So I went there and I sat down. I waited for like maybe half an hour, 40 minutes, something like that. And then the doctor came out to see me. And that was probably one of my most amusing doctor's visits I have ever had. The doctor came out, called me in. He was immediately like, I reacted to his appearance. He had like scrubs on, pretty much, like green scrubs. And he had the shirt was open to like halfway between his nipples almost. Hairy chest and a thick like gold chain with some piece of jewelry hanging here. He had a very thick, what I thought at first to be a Russian accent, but it turned out that it's an Estonian accent, and I just couldn't tell the difference because apparently they sound quite similar. And he had a snooze under his lip. I don't know, is like dip, maybe it would be called in English. Like in America, it would be known as dip. Like this tobacco product that you just put underneath your lip and you keep it there. In America, they like to put it in the lower lip. In Europe, Sweden especially, used to be in Finland before, but now it's illegal to sell here. It's called snooze, or I think snooze comes from the word snuff, but it's not snuff because snuff you sniff. Snooze is like a nicotine product, baked tobacco pretty much, that you shove underneath your lip and you keep it there for X amount of minutes or hours depending on how you like it. And yeah, so he was sitting there, but the thing is, it's kind of equivalent to smoking, and I'm not used to dealing with a doctor that, like what they do on their own time, I don't care. If they want to go out and smoke in the break, I don't care. Snooze, whatever. Just you do whatever. I'm just not used to dealing with a doctor who's supposed to be like, all rubber gloves and rubbing alcohol to keep everything sterile, sitting there with like a big wad of chewing tobacco underneath his lips. So it was really strange. And his examining of me was also very strange. I sat down, told him what had happened, and he leaned forward a little bit and looked at my arm and was like, yes, maybe there is a little pit over there that is not on the other arm. And then he took a ballpoint pen and he just like drew a circle here. And then he called to the, what do you call it? The sound thing. Ultrasound? Yeah, ultrasound. That's exactly what it is. He called over to the ultrasound unit and was like, can you do me a favor? Can you check this guy's arm before you guys leave? And they're like, all right, fine. And like, I don't know, 5 minutes later, that was extremely fast. 5 minutes later, I was on the table doing an ultrasound check, and that doctor was like, he was moving my arm and like this passively, and same time checking with ultrasound here, and he said like there is no movement. Like since as I said, the muscle is always under tension, so even if you passively just move your arm, you should see the sinews here move if they are connected to the muscle. And there was no reaction. So it was like, okay, it's a complete break. You tore it off. And I was like, all right. I went back to the main doctor, and he was like, all right, well, I'm gonna send you to the shoulder department. They'll call you within 2 weeks. You'll get a magnetic, like an MRI scan, because that's what's needed as the next step to decide whether or not or what they need to operate. So he said like 2 weeks somebody will call you. And I was like, all right, shit, I'm having a baby soon. And he was like, well, that is unfortunate, but cannot do anything about it. I was like, all right, great. And then he asked me, do you need painkillers? I was like, I don't know. Will this get worse? And he was like, well, what do you have at home? I was like, you know, the basic painkillers. It's over here, it's Burana, Panadol, things like that. There's like the stuff you take for headaches. He was like, all right, that's good enough. Do you need time off from work? I was like, I don't know, you tell me. And again, he was like, what do you do for work? I was like, I'm a sales engineer, mostly computer job. He was like, all right, there's no need for that either. I was like, okay, fantastic. And after that, he was like, right, well, that's all I can do for you. Thank you and goodbye. I was like, all right, that's weird. Anyways, next day I went into work. I told people about that. They were all like, yo, you need to go to like a private clinic. Our workplace apparently has really good like insurance even for out of work injuries and accidents. So I was just like, all right, I'm gonna go. So I went there, and they were a lot more professional in a lot of ways. The doctor there really like examined me, had me move my arms in different directions, and with his thumbs was like checking around, like, can he feel the sinews? And same thing there, he couldn't feel it on this side, he felt it on that side, so he was like, yeah, it's probably snapped. And then he was like, you need an MRI, and then we'll probably operate. And I was like, okay, when do I get the MRI? He was like, in a couple of days. I was like, sweet, nice. And then I just asked him, how quickly should you react to these kinds of accidents in order to fix them as well as possible? And he was like, well, the operation should take place within 2 weeks. And I was like, oh, because on the like universal healthcare side, there were like, you get an MRI time within 2 weeks. Not that the MRI would be within 2 weeks, but you get somebody to call you and tell you when you can come within 2 weeks. And he was like, yeah, that's a little bit late. It really needs to be quicker than that. I was like, well, okay, great. Good thing I came here. And that is where we are right now. I am currently walking around with a broken bicep and waiting for the private health clinic guys to call me. They were going to call me on Monday, I think, and give me an MRI time. And then I'm going to go to do an operation. And yeah, that's pretty much it. It comes in a very bad time, considering that my girlfriend is going to go into labor like any minute now. And probably after the operational it will be kind of difficult to use this arm, even more difficult to use this arm than it currently is. So it might be a little bit difficult to take care of the baby the first month or two. Great, everything's going fucking peachy. But whatever. Life throws you a curveball, and there's nothing really you can do about it. You can bitch and moan as much as you want, but you still got to get through it. But yeah, so that's the story about my muscle. I did a house tour today. I actually walked around with my camera for like half an hour throughout the house. But I decided that A, the footage is half an hour of shaky phone cam, which isn't great, and B, probably rather talk about my muscle right now, because I can do the house tour anytime, pretty much. The reason I decided not to do the house tour video today was because I realized that it would be a lot smarter for me to just go to this different locations around the house and just have like keep the camera steady and just let you watch, instead of going like this and talking at the same time. It wasn't great to watch, so I'm gonna change the idea of the video there a little bit, but you will get a house tour soon. Do not worry about that, because I need to talk about something in these videos. Either way, I think we're gonna end it right here. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed listening to my rambling and talking about my injured arm and whatnot. And yeah, I think in the coming week, I think the final episode of Subnautica will come out maybe on next Friday. It's possible. And Path of Exile will probably end the week after that. And then I'm gonna start uploading Far Cry 5 videos as well, which I've made a few of so far. The game is gorgeous. Really have to can't stress that enough. It's a really good looking game. How far I've gotten into it, like mentally, how invested am I? Not super invested yet, but I'm working my way into it. I want to know more about the story. It's it's a shooter. It's a very open world shooter, so story comes second place. But I know there's story there because Far Cry 3 had a really, really good story, even if it was like this very open, blah blah kind of game. There was a red line through everything, and I really hope that Far Cry 5 has the same. And from what I've understood, it does, but there are other missed opportunities with the story that they chose not to do. They could have made it more of a political commentary, but they chose not to. So it's all very safe. So I don't know how invested I will get in the story, but I'm gonna find it at least. So yeah, that's pretty much it for today's Sunday Snippet. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.